Hello there. So today we are going to start with another topic, that is cellular respiration. So before proceeding, let us just basically understand what do you mean by cellular respiration, right? In higher organisms like us human beings, the respiration process basically it is divided into different phases. The one phase is breathing and gaseous exchange, and the another one is cellular respiration. So, if I precisely talk about cellular respiration, it is the process through which oxidation of food material takes place in order to release energy. And since it occurs in within the cell at cellular level, that is why it is known as cellular respiration. So, respiration is basically release of energy by oxidizing food material. So, can we write here that what is respiration? Respiration is oxidation oxidation of certain respiratory substrate, and these respiratory substrates are none other but food materials only within the within a living cell to release energy, right? So oxidation of respiratory substrates, that are your food materials, within a living cell to release energy, is known as cellular respiration. And whatever energy is being released, it is going to store in the form of ATP. So I can write released energy is going to stored up in the form of ATP. And we know ATP is the energy currency of a body, and it stands for adenosine triphosphate, right? Then also the whole process is actually a gradual process. It is not like that it is just one step process. It occurs in a lot more than one step, and it is a complex process that we will see soon in upcoming videos. Now another thing that is I talked about here is respiratory substrate, right? So what exactly is respiratory substrate? What are respiratory substrate? So what are respiratory substrates? These are the these are the components of food, or any compound which are actually oxidized during respiration. So I can say these are compounds which are oxidized during the process of respiration. And the example can be the most used or commonly used respiratory substrate is carbohydrate. So carbohydrate, then fat, also protein can be utilized, and sometimes certain organic acids as well. So the most commonly used one is carbohydrate, for example glucose. Other than that, if carbohydrate is not present, then fat will be utilized. If both carbohydrate and fat won't be present, then protein will be utilized. It is like this, okay? So respiratory substances are the compounds which are oxidized during respiration. Now when I'm talking about respiration, it is of two types. So respiration can basically be divided into two types. Let us see. So the very first one is aerobic respiration, while another one is anaerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration is the one that happens when there is absence of oxygen in the environment. Sorry, aerobic respiration happens when there is presence of oxygen in the environment. If there is oxygen present, then aerobic respiration will take place, and that is why it is also known as oxygenic respiration. While in the case of anaerobic respiration, it takes place when there is absence of oxygen in the environment. Then when there is no oxygen utilized, then it is known as anaerobic respiration, and that is why it is also known as an oxygenic type of respiration, right? Now, whichever the process is, whether it is aerobic respiration or anaerobic respiration, both the process it start with the common process that is known as glycolysis. So I can say that glycolysis is the common pathway for aerobic respiration as well as anaerobic respiration. And although it is a very complex process that we will see in upcoming videos, but basically I can tell you that during glycolysis what is going to happen, the glucose, which is the most commonly used respiratory substance, it is going to get converted into something known as pyruvic acid. So during glycolysis, the glucose is going to get converted into pyruvic acid. Now, once the pyruvic acid has been formed, after that, depending whether the oxygen is present in the cell or not, the respiration can be aerobic type or it can be anaerobic type. Okay. So if, of course, the oxygen is present, it is going to be aerobic type of respiration. And so I can say the very first step in the case of aerobic respiration is glycolysis, which will be followed by Krebs cycle, and then something known as electron transport system. Okay, well, if oxygen is absent in the environment, there is no oxygen present inside the environment, then it is going to go for either alcohol fermentation, something known as alcohol fermentation, or it can enter lactic acid fermentation, depending in which type of cell it is happening, that we will discuss later on in the upcoming videos. So this is basically the two type of respiration, aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So let us quickly just understand the basic differences between these two. Okay, so I'm talking about aerobic and anaerobic type of respiration. So aerobic is also known as oxygenic type of respiration, while anaerobic is also known as an oxygenic type of respiration. Okay, so the basic difference, the very first difference is that, of course, write it like this. The very first difference is, of course, here aerobic respiration, it takes place in the presence of oxygen, while anaerobic respiration, it takes place in the absence of oxygen, right? Then here the aerobic respiration, in the case of aerobic respiration, what happens, complete complete oxidation of respiratory substrate takes place. So here the respiratory substrates, they are completely oxidized. Okay, while in the case of anaerobic respiration, here incomplete oxidation of respiratory substrate takes place. The respiratory substrate, they are not going to completely oxidized. Okay, and since here the complete oxidation, in the case of aerobic respiration, the complete oxidation of respiratory substrates is taking place. That is why the energy that is being produced is around 36 to 38 ATP as compared to anaerobic one, which produce only 2 ATP. So you can see the difference. That is because here complete oxidation of respiratory substrate is taking place. Here incomplete oxidation of respiratory substrate is taking place. Right? Then another difference can be basic steps, like it involves glycolysis, then Krebs cycle, something known as Krebs cycle, which is also known as citric acid cycle, and electron transport chain. While here simply the very first step is glycolysis is going to happen, and then it will be followed by incomplete oxidation. So there is no Krebs cycle or electron transport chain is going to happen. Also the carbon dioxide that is going to release here will be more, and here it will be much less. So these are the basic difference, you can say, in between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So in this video we had seen the basic meaning of cellular respiration. We have seen what are respiratory substrate, and we have seen the two types of respiration, aerobic and anaerobic, the basic difference among these two. In the next video, I'm going to talk about glycolysis process, and then Krebs cycle, electron transport chain, and also about two type of fermentation, that is alcohol and lactic acid fermentation. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next video. Till then, bye bye, take care, and see you next time.